Welcome to NinonSpeaks Media English. I am Ninon, Rosa, and you are going to be joining me for the next hour. I hope you will stay on the air because we have the most incredible guest. And I don't know why or how it took me so long to have this incredible woman on my show, but everything good takes a long time. And also timing is also one of the greatest things in the world, which a majority of us don't abide by. We always want it on our timing, and we don't like to have that relaxing time. But we're going to learn a lot about how to relax and how to be you and how to actually enjoy yourself. The ever-loving essence of you is going to be the title. The young lady I have on today is Jamie Lerner. She's I don't have her. Let me introduce. She was born into an incredible family, a family that actually, as a child, and I believe very young, but we will find out, was allowed to actually have her own inspirations, her own feelings, and was allowed to create them, was allowed to use them, was allowed to sort of embellish on them, and actually kind of be herself without forever having these, no, you can't do this, and no, you can't do that, because that's the favorite word for children, no. We see embedded in every single child for many years. So anyway, let me introduce Jamie Lerner. Jamie, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Well,
it's a pleasure.
Well, you're an amazing woman, and over the years we've kind of learned each other. But it's funny when you meet someone for the first time and how so many times we have a connection. And you and I, without even knowing each other, we kind of have that instinct connection.
Yes.
Why does that happen and where? I mean, we know when it happens, but why does that happen?
Well, I think it happens with people that are comfortable with themselves. And when you're comfortable with yourself and you're open to connecting with other people, that connection becomes quite easy. And I think that you and I are similar in that way. We're both very comfortable with ourselves. So when I met you, I instantly recognized something in myself, in you. And yeah, and
that's nice. The funniest thing is that we ended up sitting next to each other, which we didn't plan. None of these are planned, but that's just kind of how life is. Now, I was looking in your background of your life, and I think your childhood is fascinating, and I'd like to know a little bit more about how your parents brought you on and how they allowed so many things, because I think it's a good lesson for parents out there now, instead of having this forever, no, you can't do this, no, this, no, this. Everything's no. And
yes,
so
that's interesting.
No. So well, what are mother's ingredients?
Well, I was born into a wonderful family of parents who were very busy being out in the world and doing wonderful things. First they were traveling the world, and then they were taking care of all kinds of other people other than their family out in the world. And as a result of that, they allowed us to do and experience and to create our own lives, starting from a very young age. And I do not remember my parents ever really saying no to us. They brought us up in such a way that there was very little resistance, very little to push against, and therefore we were really able to hear our own voice. Yeah. And I grew up very much hearing my own voice, knowing that I kind of beat to my own drum and that I did not necessarily conform to the norm, but I was very clear about who I was. And so I feel so blessed to have grown up in that kind of environment and to have been able to remain eternally connected to myself.
Well, that's another challenge. Through is you maintained it, and so at a very young age you were very comfortable with you, not even knowing that that was kind of a formula that very few people had and have. So you just was a natural thing for you. Do you think that was because of your parents actually went out and probably helped so many other people that they actually saw how other people lived and things that they thought, well, we don't want to do it that way because this is the consequence?
I think my parents are very special people in the sense that we grew up in a very privileged environment, and yet we learned at a very young age that all people are the same. And so they treated all people that came into our lives exactly as they treated us. And the message was always, if there's a will, there's a way. There's endless possibility and opportunity for everybody. And I think that that was really a very loving and lovely message for us to grow up with.
And also to pass down on to other children, which were your friends, everybody that actually were out there, and that you could actually pass this message down to as to how you were.
Yes, this is true. Although my great challenge as a child from a very young age was having a connection with my mother. So here I was very connected to myself, and yet very confused about the fact that I did not have this emotional connection to my mother.
So what was this? What was the one on top that was your most, the one you really didn't connect? And I'm sure there's a lot of them that you could connect with, but which was the most prominent one you can remember?
In terms of my parents?
Yeah, your mother. No, your mother. The most prominent one you couldn't get on with her.
It's not that I couldn't get on with her. It's that I felt that she was very unavailable to me emotionally. And so I kept thinking at a very young age that if I should be different, that maybe she would love me more, or she would recognize me more, we would have a relationship. And I made a choice at a very young age to maintain the connection with myself and to, in some ways, not give up on my connection with her, but to try to seek out the reason without losing my own connection with myself. And it really took me half my life to understand the issue between my mother and I, which really had nothing to do with me at all.
Not at all. But isn't it, it's strange because so many mothers and daughters have this particular problem. And I've always felt that it's the conflict of women. Although you're not a woman when you're a child, but you're still, you're going to grow into a woman. You're still a girl. You're going to be a woman. And there's still this conflict of the competition of the same sex. Because we've always had this awful competition. Men don't seem to have it as much. Men seem to sort of be able to get on more and be together more, whereas women always have this conflict all the time.
Well, it's interesting. What I learned later on in my life is that really my mother never had the connection with her own self. And because she was not connected with herself, she could not connect with me. And therein lies an issue for most of us, that, you know, the most important connection that we can ever have is with ourselves. That's where it all starts. That is the foundation for every other relationship that we go on to have or not. So the premise of the book, The Ever-Loving Essence of You, really speaks to that. How can we create this connected, loving relationship with ourselves first?
Okay, so, and this is what you teach, and obviously you've written this incredible book, which I've read actually, and it is an incredible book. But also, thank you. But also, what would you like to help other women? Because obviously you help people all the time on either the internet or phone calls or however you do your business, and you have a tremendous following. What is the first sort of thing you try to explain to a woman? How can she connect with her? I think most women don't know how to actually start to connect with themselves. Well, what do I do? They're flummoxed. They don't know how that works.
Well, I think one of the most important things that we can do is to identify our mind chatter. That we have this kind of unconscious dialogue with ourselves all the time, and we're unaware of it. And usually it's quite negative. Usually it's this, I don't know, this stream of unconscious negativity.
Not being good enough. Would it be not being good enough?
It's all of those messages. We're not good enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not thin enough. We're not whatever it is. But I think that most people aren't even aware that that chatter, mind chatter, is occurring. So I really ask people to just quiet their minds and to see if they can identify what that chatter is. And it's interesting when people do quiet their minds and begin to identify it, they can understand that they're actually feeling what they're feeling, and it's not even based in any reality now. Maybe it's based in something from childhood, but it has nothing to do with their now. So that's the other thing I like people to try to sort out. Like, however you're feeling, does it have anything to do with your life right now? And for most people, it doesn't.
No,
It's old stuff that has nothing to do with where we are right now. So when people can identify that, I think it's a big relief for them.
and I think a lot of, and it's funny because we seem to be gearing more onto the women because men also have the same problem, and they have it just as much as we do, but it's different because they challenge their brains differently. And I think that us women should really understand that they do, because we've got this woman's lib going on. We all want to be, the same as the man, and say, well, we're never ever going to be the same as the man. We are not a man. We are a woman. We think differently.
But I have to say, men are much better at compartmentalizing things than women are.
Oh, yes.
And it becomes far easier for me in terms of working with men than working with women. It's easier to work with men because they are less emotional and they are more interested in tapping into their personal power. They really buy into that. So it's easier.
It's much easier, but when you think about it, logically, if you think about it, we are attached to a man, not a woman, unless you're gay. So our feelings and everything are more to a man, which means we can really communicate. If we're going to marry this guy, whoever it may be, we're going to communicate with this person 24 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever the case may be, but we've got to communicate. So we're very used to that. This is very much of, so, and I do agree with you. It's not that I don't get on with women, but if I want, work-wise, business-wise, I really much prefer to do with a man because it seems to go straight to the point. It seems to be of what you're trying to do and the goal you're trying to reach, whereas I find women sort of drift off into some dating or drinking or something seems to kind of evolve into it.
Well, I think that there's an emotional component that women are always looking for. However, I have to say that the conversations that we are going to be having with other people, we really need to have with ourselves first, because women become way too dependent on the outside world in order for how they are going to feel. And that's a big problem. The personal freedom that I'm talking about is how can we feel good about ourselves regardless of what the outside world is saying to us or about us. And that really comes from the conversations that we're going to have with ourselves.
And you're so right. You're so right, because we always think of what are people going to look, if I'm fatter, what are they going to look at if I don't have the makeup on? We're always so concerned about this outside cover that we don't go into the inside.
Well, this is true, and it's interesting because usually if we're feeling good about ourselves, it doesn't matter if we're fat, if we're wearing makeup, if we're not wearing makeup, we are projecting ourselves out into the world in such a way that then people are attracted to us because we are attracted to ourselves. So once again, that all starts with how are we going to feel about ourselves, and that's a choice, a conscious choice that we have to make for ourselves, with ourselves.
And now, how do women, because they're really the ones that look after the children and bear the children, and they have this obligation, not necessarily the obligation these days after the child is born, because we get so many different parents, the father or the mother are looking after the child, or even the grandparents are looking after the children. But how does a woman cope with this in this day and age of taking care of a child as well as working, and then looking at herself, because she's going to turn around and say, I don't have time for myself?
Okay, and I think that that's just completely not true. I think that we have used our children and our jobs as a way to hide behind them and not address ourselves. And that's just absurd. We need to address ourselves first thing in the morning. We need to feed ourselves before we can feed our children. We need to nourish and nurture ourselves before we can do that for our children. And I just don't think it's true. However, it's not easy because women believe that they need to sacrifice in order to be valued. And, that's not true either. That women need to value themselves.
Why do we always have this security? Why do we always have to have this sort of security of how good we are or how great we are or all this? Why?
I think that we are really way too focused on the outside world and what people are going to think about us. But in actuality, what we think about ourselves is what people think about us. So it starts with us. If you are feeling good about you, people feel good about you. And if you're not feeling good about you, people are not going to be feeling good about you. Because
what made you decide to write this book, The Ever-Loving Essence of You, which meant that you had a tremendous knowledge of your own self, because you were actually given that, and maybe you got more of it because you weren't that connected to your mother, so you were able to have a lot of your own thoughts and your own self and your own being.
My mother had scleroderma for several years, which no one even knew she had. She was quite an amazing woman. And she was the kind of woman that believed there was 48 hours in every day, and she lived them to the fullest. She lived the life of 10 people. And the last 5 days of her life, I sat with her, and she was in a coma, and she was unable to really speak. And I really felt so connected to her. I felt like at that moment, all of who she was, all of the love just came streaming through her. And I felt very close to her. So that was really the inspiration for my book. When then she transitioned 5 days later, I sat down and I wrote this book, because really this book is about the ever-loving essence of all of us. And the messages in this book is how it's actually a very practical book that has a step-by-step way to create a connected relationship with yourself. So
that's funny you should talk about your mother like that, because I had the same experience with my mother, and it's something will never leave my mind, and it'll never leave my sight or anything. And my mother was in England, so I'd flown over to England. And I was sitting by her bed. She was in a nursing home, and she was, she wasn't in a coma, but she hadn't spoken for a year and a half. And I'm sitting, and I'm just crying and crying and crying, and I just can't help it. And she moved her little hand that was so frail, and she just moved it just like not even half an inch, just to let me know that she had the strength there. And then she must have plucked up enough courage, and a single tear came down her face. And I'll never forget that, because she was telling me, and like you, there was this impact of feeling between two people that you cannot imagine. And I know exactly how you felt, because, well, not exactly, but similar to how we both felt at such a situation where I could talk, yes, you could talk. Your mother couldn't, and my mother couldn't. And this incredible feeling, not amazing a woman, a mother. Only a mother can do that.
it's true. And we had conversations that we had never had our whole life together. Just me sitting and speaking with her in those 5 days. So, that was, I just felt blessed to have had that time with her. And I really understood her inability, her whole life, to have that loving connection with herself.
Did you feel that it was, you wish you'd had it before? Did you wish you'd kind of had that sit down together many, many years before?
Yes, I do. I think that that's really what I spent half my life wanting. And yet my mother spent most of her life doing everything she possibly could to avoid that relationship with herself. And she did. She was a force of nature, for a champion for everybody else. And yet when it came to addressing herself, she just couldn't, for whatever reason. So,
do you feel in your heart that, and this happens to many people, that they'll do something to run away from something else they have within because they don't want to actually address it, so they'll do everything else possible to avoid it?
yes, and I think that we can successfully go through our whole lives and never address ourselves, and yet we feel empty. So it doesn't matter how much we do and where we go, and how much we travel and how many symphonies we see and ballets and volunteer work. We can't fill ourselves up, because really that's not what we're needing. We're needing the connection with our inner being. So yes, I think yes.
And why is that? because you deal with this all the time with people you talk to, and I'm sure everyone, they're like snowflakes, they're all different, they've all got a different story, but basically it comes down to the same thing. It all comes down to the same of why do we have this? Why do we build ourselves in this? We're just a human being that comes in breathing and goes out breathing. We come in to breathe for the next 60, 80, 90, 100 years, and as soon as we lose our breath, we're gone, goodbye. But we have this strange life that we feel within us of how we have to live it, and yet we don't.
Well, the good news is that our inner, it's all good news, but our inner being is tapping us on the shoulder all the time, trying to get our attention. And so at any given moment, we have a choice to really reconnect with ourselves, because we are born connected. We are born into love and light, and just over time, just the day-to-day, and looking outside of ourselves so often and looking for that approval, and our inner voice gets drowned out by our daily reality. So it's important to know that whether you're wanting to listen or not, your inner being is always there trying to get your attention. And it's interesting, when things happen, sometimes people will say, I had a feeling that was going to happen, or I knew I should have done this, or I knew I should have done that. There's something that's prompting them. They can't put their finger on it, they don't know what it is, but they don't follow through with it. And in retrospect,
your gut feeling, that's when we take it.
Right. That's right, their gut feeling. And it's their inner being. So, I think that is always there for us. And so how can we tune into ourselves? How can we tune back into our inner being, our inner knowing?
And how do we do that?
Well,
relax. I'm just thinking of our audience out there, of sort of, relaxing, and especially the women, and they're more difficult, and sort of get in there. Into ourselves.
Yes, and I think that there are many ways to do that, and I think that just to be conscious that you have the choice, I think that is where it all starts. So every moment you have a choice for how you're going to feel. What you're going to think about and how you're going to feel is completely your choice. So that's a very powerful statement.
That's a very powerful statement. So how do we all say, we don't have time. Because everybody, I don't have time. Or when they they've got the time, and then all of a sudden something happens, which means they're not concentrating on what they need to do, and they're letting something else or somebody else distract them.
Okay, so that's a choice. So it's good to say that I'm choosing to not make time for myself. I am not a victim to my circumstances. I have made a conscious choice. And that feels a whole lot better than feeling like you don't have time. Because everyone has time.
Yeah.
You make the time for yourself. So you have time for everything and everyone else but yourself. I just don't find that. So it's very important to take responsibility and to say, I choose not to take time for myself. And that's okay too. That's a choice.
So that's how we're getting into the land of choices, of the choices we make, and we have choices 24 hours a day.
24 hours a day, exactly. Personal responsibility, which people are not really that interested in. They would rather blame everybody and everything around them and have a victim mentality. That's a choice too. So choose it. Say, I choose to be a victim. Well, that will feel a whole lot better than saying, I am a victim. Because no one's a victim. You choose to be a victim.
You choose. Having a choice is a choice. If you choose, that's still a choice.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right.
Maybe people don't understand that.
Well, no, but there's a lot of freedom in knowing that you are making a choice. And I think that's a wonderful thing to do. So
with our younger generation, because as you know, I'm very attached to the younger generation, and I get very concerned about them because of the life that they're in right now. And being older, you know, I feel sorry for a lot of things that are going on and a lot of things are happening. But they're so used to being brought up in the world they're in. It's only me because I've lived longer than they have, and for them it's no big deal. But at the same time, they have a lot of choices out there of going to college, not going to college, getting a job, or choosing this job, or being an entrepreneur. How do these young people also, which I think is really, really tough on them, is when they do choose to go to college and they come out of college, they've got at least a $20,000 to $400,000 debt. How do these young people cope with all this? I different question for you, but
well, I think that young people today are much more entrepreneurial than we ever were, and that they are using the internet to tap into all kinds of opportunities for themselves, for work, and even for school. I mean, a lot of people are choosing to go to college online. You know, the internet has really opened up the world to young people, well, to everybody. And and so I really think in many ways that younger people are better prepared to deal with this, all of this, than we are. And we do not give them enough credit. Young people are extremely resourceful and extremely resilient and extremely creative and, once again, extremely entrepreneurial.
I think so too, and I think we need to get that message out there, and I love what you just said, because I couldn't agree with you more, because a lot of people, older people, parents are saying how stupid and rude our children are. Stupid, they're certainly not. Rude, if they don't know manners, it's because we as parents or whomever have not taught them that. So you can't just grow up and learn everything without somebody teaching you something, because that's what you're doing growing up, is to learn all this stuff. So they have to learn it themselves. And I personally think a lot of people are just very jealous of them because they're so entrepreneurial. As you said, they're incredible out there.
Yes, yes, and all of these online companies like Etsy, I mean, you see these young people, they are making things at home and creating huge businesses for themselves. And all of these other ways that they're raising money, you know, just there are so many ways to get people to get behind them on projects. You know, young people too, especially right now. So I'm not worried about young people at all. I'm actually more concerned about old people than I am about young people.
Well, that's true, because the world has since 2008, I guess, that a lot of older people lost their money and lost their jobs, and you know.
And we're living a lot longer too. We're living a whole lot longer.
Do you think that's a good idea to live longer? I mean, because I'm sort of a little apprehensive about that.
Well, I think if we can embrace the quality of life, I think yes. And I think quality of life is a choice as well. You know, I think older people have opportunities that they didn't have in the past. You know, there's all kinds of like exercise opportunities for older people that never existed before. And learning opportunities. Look at all of older people now that they have iPhones and they're connected to the internet. Even homebound people are connected to the internet and are able to communicate with people all over the world. They're able to order their groceries online. I mean, it's just, they have many more opportunities today than they've ever had. And options as well. So.
Well, I think of my dear darling grandmothers, both of them, and they never had a computer, and I mean, they never heard of it. But they did have their life, but then when you look at their life and sort of an older person's life now, it's completely different. You know, absolutely. I think it opened up these fields, and so many people feel that they don't like the advancements of life. They don't like the change of life. I happen to love the change of life. And like when I'm going to go right back to choices. Choices are the change of life. That's your choice, to change and to do something different and get your voice out there and get yourself out there.
And I was at the Apple store the other day, and I saw 90% of the people there were 60 years old and over. It was unbelievable. I mean, they were taking seminars, they were learning how to use the computer, they were learning how to use the telephone, and it was really inspiring. So although I do worry a little bit about the older generation, I think they're doing quite well.
That's a good thing what you just said. So why are they suddenly, all of a sudden, making these incredible choices of getting out there and doing something for themselves? Because they're lonely and they know that they can sort of get on the computer and do something rather than just sit and watch TV and do all different things.
Well, also, these people are also meeting people online, meeting long-lost friends from high school and college and dating and reconnecting and having a second half of their life. So I think that they are really seeing all the endless possibility in, what is possible for them as they're getting older.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
What changes have you made, I'm going to say in the last sort of 10 years, or, even 15 years, but 10 years, what changes have you made from 10 years ago till now of how you inspire people when they call you or they want a session with you and they need help as to getting out of their rut? What difference have you seen?
Well, I have really focused with people on now. People want to talk about the past, and that's not something that I encourage anyone to really do unless they're wanting to revisit something that felt really good in the past. I think we spend far too much time focusing on what happened to us in our childhood, and I don't think that that is helping us in any way move forward and identify where we want to go. So the focus that is really important is where are you right now and where do you want to be?
So that's why you've changed then. So you've changed as of not forgetting the past, but the past is the past.
That's right. It is the past.
Yeah, the past is the past. What we're doing right now and the future is we've got the present and then we have the future. But living in the present is the most important.
Yes, that's all we have is right now. It's this very moment. And I think it's hard for people to be in the moment. They are either in the past or they are in the future. And usually when they're in the future, they're not in the future the way they want it to be. They are in the future in the way they do not want it to be. So I really encourage people to focus on what they want, not what they don't want. Most people focus on what they do not want, and guess what they get? What they do not want.
What they do not want. Okay, opened up another door there. Focus on.
That's right. What you focus on is what you attract.
Okay.
That's right.
Focus is the brain part, because I know you're fascinated with the brain, and so am I fascinated with the brain. And I always feel we really don't use our brain as much as we should. I'm trying to use it by doing, not tricking it, but by doing different things. I like to try different things, do different things, activate it, or keep it activated.
Okay.
How do we get other people to kind of sort of start realizing that they do have a brain and they can use it and they can change it, but also to live like, in the present and maybe think of the future a little bit, but live more in the present of what they want and not the bad things that have happened to them and what they don't want. How do you do that?
Well, I think that if people can buy into what we think about is what we attract into our experience, and that's a fact. I mean, that just is. That is, that's a fact. That's a universal law. What you think about is what you attract into your experience, which means you have to take responsibility for what you're thinking about. So managing your thoughts, I would say, is the number one most important thing that you can do. Managing your thoughts, and that's a huge job. And that is, quite frankly, your only job, because everybody else is really none of your business. None of your business.
Well, you can't tell a lot of people that's what they think. They think it's their business.
Of course they do.
It's such a waste of time. People worry about things and do things that has nothing to do with them.
Nothing. It's nothing to do with them at all. But it's an interesting distraction. However, if you make a conscious choice to manage your thoughts and feelings, you can manifest anything for yourself, and I mean anything. So I think people should try it. I think people should be so aware of what they're thinking about and how they're feeling, And I think within 5 days, they will see evidence. Things will show up in their life to support what they've been thinking about. Now, 90% of the people will say, yes, all these bad things happen to me all the time. And you ask them, well, what have you been thinking about? Yeah, they've been thinking about all these bad things.
But
And lo and behold,
all the bad things are going to happen.
right, that's what happens. So what you expect is what you get. That's it. That's the way it works.
I mean, it's very simple and very broad. So how do you get somebody, you've given them 5 days, they've got 5 days to actually change their way of thinking. So they have to start thinking of the happy thoughts, a pretty time with their grandchild, or a pretty time with their daughter, or what they would like to do. You know, I'd like to go to the library and get a book and read this book, or I would like to go to learn French, or I would like, lots of different, learn cooking. I mean, you're never too late to learn a language, you're never too late to learn cooking, you're never too late to do anything.
Well, it's interesting. Most people know what they don't want, but most people do not know what they do want. So you ask people what they want, and they tell you what they don't want. Don't tell me what you don't want. What do you want for yourself? And that is a big, difficult question for people. So if they can focus on that, it's amazing.
It is amazing.
They can create that.
Well, so right. I was just onto the phone with a woman yesterday. She was talking all about doing a new website and doing this and do all this promotion and PR and everything else. So I said to her, very, quite nice. I said, well, what is the cost of this? And she went on to another, what we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I said, that wasn't my question. My question was, what do you charge for this? It took me 4 times to ask her what she charged. So I said to her, I said, could you just be quiet 1 second? I'm asking you a very simple question. How much do you charge? And it took 4 sessions to get to it. Now, I know that could have been a selling place for her, but it was an aggravating place for me. I wanted to know just one thing, because I was...
Well, and I think you were frustrated because you weren't being heard. She was really not really hearing you. She was just telling you what she wanted you to hear, which is different.
Very different. Well, it was very different.
Yes.
She definitely was not listening to me at all. So
No.
Then I'm thinking to myself, well, if you're not listening to that, then are you not listening to anything else I'm saying? Are you just more interested in what you're doing? Which a lot of people do that. They're so involved in themselves that they forget to calm down and listen to whoever wants the knowledge or whatever they're trying to find out.
It's interesting. And when we go to ask someone a question, I would suggest that you ask yourself that question first, because really, what are you wanting from the other person that you're asking? Most of the time, we don't even want the other person to respond to us. We just want them to agree with us. So it's a setup. So if you are wanting to ask someone something, ask yourself why and what you're needing from the other person. What do you need? Do you need that person to tell you you're right? You're right. If you think you're right, you don't need that other person to tell you you're right. It's just, and if they don't agree with you, you're going to be angry with them. So don't be asking them what they think.
Don't even go there.
No, don't even go there. Don't even go there.
That is so right about, a lot of people in the movie industry and in the entertainment business and in what I'm doing, we feel a little sometimes, I don't feel it personally because I'm very 2 feet on the ground, but a lot of them are very insecure people unless when they ask a question, hey, how did I look? If you said, well, you could have done, if you said the honest truth, they don't want to hear you. But you could always tell them how great they are. Oh, you were wonderful, you were this, and building up their ego and building up, and that's what most people don't want to hear how bad they did, or they don't want to hear the truth.
No, they don't. So when someone really asks you, how do I look or how did I do, I don't usually say anything. I usually say to people, well, how do you think you did? And how do you think you look? Because at the end of the day, that's really more important than what I think. How do you feel about yourself? Who cares about how I feel about you? And then people are really taken aback because they really haven't considered themselves as their own greatest resource. We are our own greatest resource. We must trust ourselves. We must direct our attention back to ourselves. We must tune into ourselves. We must be connected to ourselves. We must guide ourselves. That's why we're here.
And all the things you just mentioned, none of us do.
Well, I think actually that's not true. I think we all do it. I think that we could be more conscientious when we are doing it so that we could internalize really how good it feels. It feels really good to be able to navigate your day knowing that your inner being is directing you. And you trust yourself. You just know. You don't know why you know. You don't know how you know, but you know. And that feels really good.
You brought up a good thing there when you said you've just got to trust yourself. Because when you think about it, that's all we got. I don't care about all the cars and all the furniture and all the stuff we have, you know. That really doesn't mean a thing. The only thing we actually have is ourselves, nothing else.
That's right. And who would know better for you than you? Nobody. Nobody knows better for you than you. Nobody does. You know what's best for you. You really do. Most people do. So they must consider themselves first. And when you consider yourself first, and you are your own greatest resource, then you are connected to your internal guidance that guides you to seek out the other guidance that you need, the other guidance that resonates with you.
Yeah, and that's what how do you know what guidance kind of does resonate with you? Is it past things you've done or things you feel that you could do, or how do you get into that?
You just know. It's kind of like when when you're in an environment and you are attracted to something and it just feels so natural. It's effortless. When things are effortless, I think that is when we have inspired action. We just know. There's no hesitation. There's no pause. We're just in a flow. There's no resistance. Things just move along. That's the way it's all supposed to be every single day for us.
And it's funny, I just went through that. I had this friend which I had mentioned before that I really was very fond of, met when I was a little girl. And I met him this weekend, and somebody said to me that before I went to see him, they said, "Ninon, are you excited to see him?" And without a hesitation, I said no. Without any hesitation, the answer was no. And it was so much the truth of meeting him, spending a couple of hours with him, taking him back to the airport and him leaving, that it was so comfortable and so relaxing because I knew before how I felt. But I was honest with myself. Rather than trying to push that envelope and trying to, let's make it work or let's make it do this, I just let go completely and I thought, Ninon, are you excited? And I said, well, why? And then I'd like questioning myself, why aren't you excited? Because I'm not excited. But
it doesn't matter why. You don't need to know why. There's just not any reason why. Who cares why? You know you're not excited, but you've chosen to go and you've chosen to have the experience and you've chosen to allow yourself to be however you are in that period of time.
Well, I wanted to close the book. I think this is what I wanted to kind of actually finish it, close the book nicely, and it's been done very, very elegantly and very nicely because I wouldn't do it any other way anyway. But it's done, and I don't even know if he knows, but that's beside the point. That's not his problem. This is me. And so I did it, and I feel so comfortable. I feel so at ease and so comfortable. And I felt like that, and it's funny how you can, and you've been saying this through the whole program, be truthful and honest with yourself.
That's right. It's all about you.
Somebody doesn't, even if your kids don't like it, or your husband.
You have to stay true to you. You cannot change who you are to please other people. That is ridiculous. You have to be true to you, and I do believe that you can say anything to anyone. It's just your tone. In the most loving way, you can say anything to anyone, and they will not be offended.
You've touched on something else, which is really, I think, fascinating, and I absolutely agree with you, is the tone of your voice and how you approach something. If you're internally angry at something, the tone of your voice is going to come out with this anger, whatever the case is. So you need to really, I'm talking about a husband and wife and that they're having a problem, or she wants to solve something, so it's better for her or him to have that relaxation or to have it sorted out within yourself first before you approach it.
I think that's the only way it can work. On the other hand, if your husband or your wife or your significant other gets so angry at you, you have to know in that moment that has nothing to do with you, because you do not have the power to make anybody that angry. It's not possible. And if you think you do, then you're all in your ego. We do not have that kind of power to make people that exaggerated in their emotions. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't the brunt of it. And if we are the brunt of it, that's our choice. Do we want to internalize it, or do we want to understand it, that at that moment, that person is out of alignment with themselves? And that's okay. That doesn't mean you have to take it in. You can certainly excuse yourself and walk away. But to think that you have created that, not possible. Absolutely not possible.
That's the gap there that a lot of us should learn. I happen to not do that. I happen to walk out of a room, I'll calm down and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. And I did that with my husband. And he would say, well, why do you keep walking out of the room in an angry tone? And I said, well, until you calm down, I'm not angry myself. I don't really want to join in this. And I have no idea why you're angry.
That's right.
And I told him, I said, if it's something I've said, I will apologize. And if it's something I said that you didn't understand, I will explain it. Whatever it is, I'll explain it to you. I said, but I refuse to get into something. And I think so many of us do that. We get involved into an argument that we have nothing to do with.
Nothing to do with. That's right.
They're arguing. So this is a good message to our audience out there to make sure that when there is an argument going on, who started it and who has it, and are you angry?
But if someone throws a pillow at you and you let it drop to the floor, it's over. Game over. So it's a choice. You can catch that pillow and throw it back, or you can just let it drop to the floor, excuse yourself, and just let things blow over. And, I think that would be a better feeling thing to do for everybody.
Well, I'm challenging every man and every woman and kid and everybody else to do that, because that is something, because the majority of us do not have that. We just do not.
Well, I have to say, there are times when I have 3 grown boys, and there are times when they will do anything to pick a fight with me, and I just don't go there with them. And they get so frustrated and so angry, and I just don't go there with them at all, ever. And it's really interesting, because then they really have to look at their own behavior and what they're angry at or what they're upset about, and it really has nothing to do with me.
Now, when that does happen, do you actually talk about it with him, or does he talk about with you about, I got angry at you and you didn't come back at me? I mean, and say, why didn't you come back at me? And he's trying to, because he's part of you, so why doesn't he have what you have in him? And not to have that argument, but to be able to talk to you as a one-on-one, as of, if it's a strong conversation or it's something very gentle or something very rough, whatever the case may be, that you can both handle it and have that tone of voice or posture or whatever it is, but not to argue.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because people really would like for you to bite the bait. Yes. Because if you bite that bait, then they don't have to feel that way they feel anymore. You've taken it on for them. And if you don't bite the bait, that means that they're really sitting there with how they're feeling. And usually they're only hearing their own voice. And then they have to address whatever it is that's going on with them, instead of just projecting it onto you. So, it's a choice. Do we want to get into all that drama with someone? That's a choice. You choose it, okay? Or do you want to just allow the person to hear themselves and you excuse yourself, and then when things are a little bit, like you said, kind of lower key, then you readjust it.
Yeah. Now, you've been married for quite a few years.
I've been married for a very long time.
Yeah. I know my mum and dad were married for 68 years. Woo! Miracle. I was married for 29 years after we passed away, so I couldn't help that. But your marriage, how do you maintain your marriage with your husband? Because you've obviously, you're together 24 hours, well, not 24 hours together, but you're together. And how did you maintain your stability and your, because you look so fresh and you look so happy and you look so wonderful.
Well, my husband is my greatest contrast. He is a reminder to me 24 hours a day that I must stay connected to myself. So I am married to someone who, in many ways, has given me my greatest gift, the gift of remaining connected to myself under every possible circumstance.
Wow.
It's interesting. We are very different. And he gets very frustrated at me because I do not bite the bait ever. Never.
Never bite the bait.
No. I never go there. Never.
Does it become a challenge to him?
It's a very challenging for him. But the reason I don't go there is it doesn't feel good to me. And the most important thing for me is how I feel. I'm the most selfish person on the planet. I put my first in terms of the most important thing to me is to feel good. And when I go there with him, I don't feel good because I am separating myself from my inner being. And that doesn't feel good. I feel good when I stay connected to me. And I have to say, it's at times challenging, but it feels so much better than not.
But you just put something beautiful out there. Stay connected to yourself under any circumstance.
Yeah.
Whatever the connection is,
That's
you
right.
first, and then whatever's going on outside
That's
is
right.
second.
That's right.
You are always first. So and when you know someone is giving you that challenge, because I'm very similar to you. One of these very calm people, and I don't see any point in arguing at a time when there's an argument going on. There's only bad words are going to come out and things are going to get unhappy and everything else. I just fiddle off and walk away and do what you do. I don't entertain that at all. Never have. And even when I'm with groups of people that are all either laughing and giggling and totally out of control, I don't even want that either. So there's a lot of things sometimes I don't want. I like more of a tranquil, quiet, conversation and things like that more. But I think so many of these people are not angry at themselves. They're angry at what they have created outside of themselves, and that they can't control. How do they control that? Creating this stuff that has really nothing to do with them.
Well, I think that you have a choice to get involved in drama or not. And drama is a distraction from having a relationship with yourself. Most people are just immersed in drama continually to avoid the relationship with themselves. It's a choice.
So avoid the relationship with yourself, which means avoiding the relationship with yourself. That means you don't like yourself. So then we're back all the way to square one. Start liking yourself, regardless of what you are, why you are, how you are. Because when you think about it, Jamie, this is all you got. There's nothing else.
I can tell you that whatever it is that you're thinking about yourself, that you are thinking other people are thinking that about you, they're not. People are never thinking the horrible things about you that you think about you. I don't mean you, but people in general.
Yes, you're right.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's mortifying. If you were to really isolate the thoughts that people have about themselves, and then they assume other people think that of them, that's not the way it works. People don't think, first of all, people don't even think about you. People think about themselves. People are self-centered. They don't care about you. They don't know you. They don't see you. It's just all an illusion and just something we've created in our minds. That
is so funny. I was at a meeting this morning about some property, and they had put this big thing together, this big picture together on the whole, what it was cost, and then what they were selling it for. Of what they thought my building, they're going to, all written down, all printed out, everything. And I looked at both of these guys and I said, did it ever occur to you to call me up and find out what I wanted for the building before you went through all this rigmarole? I said, because you've got through all this. Excuse me, this is all a total waste of time because I'm not doing any of this. But why didn't you call me rather than they went through all this assuming?
That's right. So what did they say to you?
They said they were shocked. They both sat there. They couldn't believe it. And I said, well, I'll tell you what I will do. There's a builder thing. I'll list with them. So I said, I'm not going to list with you. I said, but this is the prices I want for the builder. If you have someone come along that would like to pay this particular price for my two buildings, fine. But I'm not going to list with you for sure. Because if this is the way you think, I'm not going to go with you.
Well, it's interesting because these people you were dealing with believed that they knew what was better for you than you did, which I think is an interesting assumption. But in fact, your belief system is you know better.
Yeah, well, because I
right.
And I own it.
Of course.
And I was thinking, when I was walking out of the driveway, I thought, how could they do that to waste all that time? I mean, they had this book together on two properties, two books. Analyze the traffic, the this. I mean, I've never seen so much And it's a little tiny building. I thought, what a waste of time. And all they had to do was make a phone call and ask me.
Well, that whole process had nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with me at all.
No, it was all their ego. All that was their ego. It's okay.
But it's funny how people's ego, how they assume and they think and how they assume when they, instead of getting it to the nitty-gritty of the point, exactly what it is, of building this great big picture or whatever it may be, the same as an argument, building a great big argument that had nothing to do with the other person in the first place.
Exactly.
Or even the kids, if a child, a 15, 16-year-old has done something or has come home late or whatever, then they lay into that child before they find out the facts of what actually happened and sort of, talking about it nicely. And I think that's what we need. I think we need a little bit more tranquility in this world, don't you think? Understanding yourself, that's all it is.
I think that is it. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. Love yourself, understand yourself, consider yourself first and foremost.
So, number one, I'd like to know, how can people get in touch with you, Jamie?
I have a website. It is www.jamie-lerner.com.
That's jamielerner.com.
Mm-hmm. That's how they can get in touch with me. And
you've got a lot of things in your head. What is your next thing that you would really like to do? And I know that you're very fascinated by the brain and you're very fascinated and you actually thoroughly enjoy what you do. What is your next challenge?
I'm in the middle of writing a second book, and it is quite challenging, I have to say. So I hope at some point that I'm able to finish it. It is an ongoing project. And It's interesting, though, because it is a book about the deals that we make and break with ourselves. It's a very interesting subject because I think that we all do it across every race and religion and culture, and we make these deals with ourselves and then break them. So yeah, I'm working on that. So
you're trying to connect the dots on that.
Yes, I think that when we do that over and over and over again, that we really end up having self-esteem issues because we let ourselves down over and over and over again. We bargain with God. Oh God, if only you give me this, that, and the other, I'll do, and then we don't do our part. And
they don't want to do that.
Do we do that over and over and over again? But I think it takes a toll on our self-esteem, which is a whole other conversation. But yeah, so otherwise, I'm always doing interesting things, but certainly things that give me pleasure and help me stay connected to myself.
A grandson or granddaughter?
I have one granddaughter and another granddaughter on the way, yes, which is so fun.
Your granddaughter, is it, I mean, obviously beautiful and wonderful.
Oh, she's lovely, and we have the best time together. We're so connected. It's just incredible.
How do you like being a grandma?
I love it. I'm a nana. I don't consider myself grandma. She calls me nana. But I love it. It's just, after having 3 boys, I'm so ready to have female energy in my life. And
so now she's going to guide into your life.
Yeah, and I really think that children teach us. They do. They are our greatest teachers. Children are. And the young people, they really are our greatest teachers.
I agree with you more. I had I had a TV show in Los Angeles for 16 years, and I gave the younger generation from 11 years old to 18 years old, I gave them a platform to have a voice out there. Those I would probably have to say were one of my best, apart from my marriage, but those were one of my best years, just to listen to these kids, and these kids would always say, well, what can I say and what can I do? And I said, well, this is the subject matter, which it was always a subject that they knew about. And I said, I'll just ask you questions. If you want to answer, you can. If you don't. I did 400 shows. Not one of those kids in any of those shows I had to ever cut out one single word they said.
I'm sure not. Yeah. They're amazing. They're amazing. They really are. Yeah.
They are amazing. Well, Jamie, we've come to the end of our show, The Ever-Loving Essence of You, which is the title of the show. And it's, what's the name of your next book?
I haven't named it yet, but the subject are the deals that we make and break with ourselves.
The deals we make and break with ourselves. Well, that we do every minute of the day. I've lost everything now.
But thank you so much for having me. This has been just a delight. I really appreciate it.
I'd absolutely love to have you because I've learned so much more about you, and I think you're just an amazing. I always have thought you are
Thank you.
amazing. I mean, you just
Thank you, Nina.
have
Thank
that
you.
essence. You just have that incredible essence, and even the show we do with you Living Consciously, which is Steve Toth, from Media Evolution Media, and which is absolutely amazing show that we've done over the sort of 3 or 4 years. But I always admire how when you come in and answer a question, or you say, "Well, let me interject here," I've always liked how you do it because you come out with something so profound and so truthful and so right on, and I always admired it.
Thank you.
I want to thank my
Thank
audience
you.
for joining Jamie Lerner and myself on NinonSpeaks Near the Image. We will see you next week. We have a young man next week. He's only 12 years old, and he's the most incredible voice on him. Absolutely amazing. So tune in next week. Thank you again, Jamie, and we'll see
Thank
you.
you. Okay. Bye-bye.